The last time I spoke to my aunt, she sent me a letter with no return address and wrote, "Some choices you don't forgive, but you live with them." I never got the chance to ask what she meant, and no one in the family will admit they even read it. I was 28 when I got the letter. A plain white envelope with no return address, no stamp with a postmark I could trace, just my name and address handwritten on the front. The handwriting stopped me cold. I recognized it right away. It was my Aunt Rita's. I hadn't seen or heard from her in 4 years. The last time I saw her was at my dad's funeral. She showed up late and left early. She didn't hug anyone, didn't even cry. She wore this old green coat, even though it was 80 degrees out. She looked thinner than I remembered, like something was eating her from the inside. Nobody talked to her. My mom avoided her completely. When I asked Mom why, all she said was, "Rita's made her choices." And that was it. Anytime I brought up my aunt, it ended in a fight. My dad had always been quiet about her too. Said family business was private. That's all he ever gave me. I opened the letter at the kitchen table. It only had one sentence. Some choices you don't forgive, but you live with them.
No greeting. No signature.
Just those words. I read it 3 times. Then I sat there in silence. I didn't know if it was about her.
About me.
About someone else. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. The next day, I tried to call her. Her number was disconnected. I emailed her, bounced back. So I drove 3 hours to her house in Toledo. It was abandoned. The lawn was dead. Windows were cracked. A for sale sign had been spray painted over with no trespassing. I knocked on the neighbor's door. This older guy in a stained tank top answered. When I asked about Rita, he scratched his head and said, "She moved out maybe 6 months ago."
Said she was going down south.
Wouldn't say more than that. I stood there feeling like I'd missed something huge. So I started asking questions. I called my mom first. She sent me a weird letter, I told her. Just one sentence. About choices you can't forgive. My mom paused for a long time. Then she said, "She always was a dramatic woman. You should throw it out." But what does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. She's just trying to stir up the past. Let it go. That's what everyone kept saying. Let it go. Asked my cousins, my uncles. Even my sister, Julie. No one would admit they'd heard from Rita. A few of them acted like they didn't even know what I was talking about. Julie got nervous when I asked her directly. "I don't know. Maybe she's losing it," she said. She was always kind of unstable. I didn't buy that. Rita was the most grounded person I knew growing up. When my parents fought, she was the one who'd take me out for ice cream and let me sleep over. She remembered my birthday every year. She made me feel like I mattered when everything at home felt cold. Then when I turned 13, everything changed. I came home from school one day and found my mom in the kitchen with red eyes and a wine glass shaking in her hand. Dad had slammed the door behind him minutes earlier. I asked what was wrong, and she said, "Your aunt finally crossed the line." That was the only explanation I ever got. From then on, Rita stopped coming around. No more cards. No more visits. She just disappeared. And anytime I asked about her, my parents shut it down. Now, all these years later, she sends me this one-line note.
No explanation.
Just pain soaked into the paper, like she wrote it crying. I kept digging. I looked into property records. Found that her house had been foreclosed on. I even contacted the post office and begged for a forwarding address, but they wouldn't give it to me. That's when I got desperate. I started calling family members I hadn't spoken to in years. One cousin, Jenny, finally cracked a little. She probably just wanted to stir up old drama, she said. She can't help herself. She never could. What drama? Jenny sighed. It's not my story to tell. That was the turning point. I realized if I wanted to know what happened, I was going to have to tear the whole thing open myself. And I did. What I found out started with a phone call to a nursing home where Rita's sister used to work. Then I found an old friend of Rita's from church. Little by little, the truth came out. And it all started with a man named Dean. My father. I never heard the name Dean used in my family before, not in that way. He was always just Dad. But when I started asking around outside the family, people who knew Rita, people who weren't part of the silence, I started hearing things that made my stomach twist. Dean and Rita were close. Too close, someone said. An older woman named Marlene, who used to go to the same church as Rita back in the 90s, told me something that stopped me cold. I always thought it was strange, the way they looked at each other, she said. Rita and your daddy. I remember thinking, that's not how in-laws act. I tried to laugh it off at first. It felt sick to even consider. But Marlene wasn't done. One night after potluck, I saw them out back near the church dumpsters. Real close. Whispering. Then he touched her cheek.
Soft.
Not like a brother-in-law. I felt like throwing up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying all the times growing up when Mom would get quiet after Dad took solo trips to Toledo. All the Christmases Rita skipped. All the times she'd change the subject when I asked about my parents' marriage. I started wondering if Rita had been in love with my dad. Or worse, if he had been in love with her. So I asked the question out loud. I went back to my mom and I asked her straight. Was Dad having an affair with Rita? She froze. Her face went white.
She didn't speak.
Just stared at me. I pushed. Was that what the fight was about? The day you said she crossed the line? Still nothing. Then, without looking at me, she said, that woman ruined our family. She wanted what she couldn't have. And when she couldn't take it anymore, she tried to take you too. What? Mom looked at me, eyes glassy. You don't remember, do you?
I shook my head.
She tried to convince your father to leave me. Said they could run away together. Start a new life. Said she could be your mother. I sat down hard. The air went out of the room. She wrote him letters, Mom said. Called a house at night. And your father, God help him, didn't shut it down the way he should have.
He was weak.
He always was. Did anything happen between them? I don't know, she said. But I saw the way she looked at him. I saw what she wanted. It was hard to breathe. Part of me wanted to defend Rita, but I didn't know what to believe anymore. Then Mom said something that changed everything. She sent you that letter now because she's dying. That's the only reason she'd reach out again. She wants to clear her conscience before it's too late. I didn't even ask how she knew. I just stood up and walked out. The next day, I searched obituaries. Nothing. Then I checked hospital records. Finally, I called a hospice center in Kentucky. Her name was on the list. She was alive.
But barely.
And I was going to see her. It took me 4 hours to get to the hospice center. A quiet place tucked behind a Baptist church in Bowling Green, Kentucky. The woman at the front desk looked surprised when I said I was there to see Rita. She doesn't get visitors, she said, checking a clipboard. Not in a long time. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. Maybe an old woman on the edge of death, frail and remorseful. What I got was Rita, thinner than I remembered, yes, but still sharp-eyed. Still Rita. She looked right at me when I walked in. I was wondering if you'd come, she said, her voice hoarse. You sent me a letter. I know. What did it mean? She looked away out the window. It means exactly what it says. That's not good enough, I said. You turn my whole life upside down. She nodded slowly. I know. I waited for her to explain, but she didn't. So, I pressed harder. Was it true? You and my dad. She closed her eyes. Her hands clenched the blanket. Yes, she said finally. We loved each other. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. He was your sister's husband. I didn't plan it, she said. I didn't expect it. But it happened. Over years.
10 moments.
Late night talks. Regrets. Your mother never loved him the way he needed. And I was always there. I wanted to scream at her. To ask her how she could betray her own sister. But I couldn't move. I was frozen. Then she said something I'll never forget. You weren't supposed to know. None of you were. But he wrote me a letter before he died. Said he couldn't leave this world with the lie between us.
He wanted me to tell you. Why?
Because you always saw me as the good one. The fun aunt. You deserve the truth. I stood up. That's not truth. That's you clearing your name before you go. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said. Some choices you don't forgive, but you live with them. My throat burned. I was a kid, I said. You let me love you. You let me think you were my safe place. I was, she whispered, in the only way I knew how. I walked out of the room. I couldn't breathe, but as I reached the lobby, the front desk nurse called out. Wait, she said. She left something for you. It was a box. Old and taped shut. Inside were letters. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. All written in my father's handwriting. Some to my mom. Some to Rita. And one to me. The envelope had my name. Sealed. Never sent. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside it said, If you're reading this, it means the truth came out. I'm sorry for what I did. To your mother. To your aunt.
To you.
But I hope you find your own way forward. You were never part of the mistake. You were the only good thing that came from it. And beneath it was a birth certificate. Only it didn't have my mom's name on it. It had Rita's. I stared at that birth certificate for a long time. My knees buckled. I sat down hard on the lobby floor, holding that paper like it was a live wire. My whole body shook. I wasn't my mother's son. I was hers. Everything began to click in place. My mother's coldness, the tension that followed Rita's disappearance, the sudden shutoff of affection once I turned 13. That was when the truth started creeping in, and they all tried to hide it. I was the product of an affair. No, worse. I was the evidence. That's why my mom cut Rita off. That's why Dad fell silent. That's why everyone told me to let it go. Because if I dug too deep, I'd find out I was never really part of the family the way I thought. I thought I was going to throw up. I took the box and left. Drove all the way back to Dayton without stopping.
Didn't eat.
Didn't sleep. Just drove. When I got home, I called my mom. I told her I knew everything. You knew all along, I said. You lied to me for 28 years. There was a pause. Then, I raised you, didn't I? I fed you. I loved you. I gave you a home. You gave me silence, I said. You gave me shame I didn't understand. You were mine, she said, voice shaking. She didn't want a baby. She wanted your father. When she got pregnant, she begged me to take you. Said she couldn't raise you. That she didn't want to ruin both your lives. You could have told me the truth. She snapped. And what would that have done, huh? Ruined your childhood? Made you feel like a mistake? She didn't even want to keep you. I did the hard thing. I protected you. No, I said. You protected yourself. You let me grow up in a house built on a lie. She hung up on me. The next day, I burned the letter from my father. I watched it turn to ash in the sink. Then I mailed every other letter in that box. Every note he wrote to Rita, every word soaked in guilt, straight to my mother. No note. No explanation. Let her read it all. Let her sit in that same fire I lived in for weeks. I never saw Rita again. She died 2 weeks later. I didn't go to the funeral. I didn't send flowers. I didn't even tell anyone she passed. It didn't matter. Everyone had already buried her years ago. But I kept the birth certificate. Not as proof. Not as a symbol. As a scar. Sometimes I look at it and feel nothing. Sometimes I cry. Other times I wonder if maybe I was the mistake everyone tried to hide. But then I remind myself. Mistakes don't dig up the truth. Mistakes don't survive what they were never meant to know. I wasn't the mistake. I was the reckoning. And now they all have to live with that. Just like Rita said.